Hey guys, this is Bill Rice again with Bill Rice Strategy, and today I want to take you through step by step on how to generate leads. I think too often in the digital channel, we kind of assume that folks are consumers, or even in the B2B context, we assume that folks are paying a little bit more attention than you think, and we might not necessarily understand or know the patterns that will make it really easy for that visitor on your website to convert. So I want to take you through that step by step. I also want to talk about prioritizing and stacking those actual lead generation tactics, because you kind of have to have some foundational elements, and you can start really simply, and then from there you can kind of stack some things on as those priorities sort of build, and will create a much more robust lead generation program. So let's start at the very basics. So first and foremost, you have to have some form of landing page. This is something to actually capture that visitor. Now, we haven't really talked about how do you get the visitor there first, but you do have to start with the landing page first, because without that, you potentially can get a lot of attention, start to build some audience, and not actually have some place for them to go. So I like to start with this landing page. Landing page, again, in its simplest form, can be a variety of different solutions. There's things like Card that allow you to just do a real quick email capture. I'm a big fan of Gumroad because I can actually, deliver something of value there, and it gives me all the infrastructure to build out a nice landing page, put some sort of PDF or some sort of proxy for an MVP of my product on there, and be able to efficiently and effectively deliver that. So Gumroad is a big favorite of mine. Ultimately, you'll probably move on to something like WordPress and have a full-on website, but let's focus first on the landing page. So what do you need on the landing page? Well, one, you need a clear and concise header of some form. That should be, again, not overcomplicated. Be very clear as to what the value proposition is. What am I going to give you, or what problem am I going to solve, or what solution am I going to give you? A good solid header, nice and clear. Don't get flowery. Don't overdo the copywriting. Just tell them what you're going to give them. And then underneath that is a little bit of copy that just gives them a little extra dose of what is the benefit of doing the next thing that you're going to ask them to do. And then, of course, you're going to ask them to do something. That's probably going to be filling out a form, which you can kind of see I'm laying out the page here mentally, because I use the same pattern because it's really effective. And that is simply, if you're looking at the web page, on the left-hand side, put that header, that positioning statement, or that benefit statement, ask them to do something, and then over to the right of that page, as again you're looking at it on your screen, have some form of form to be filled out, right? To capture that information. It can be as simple as the email address. I'm actually a big fan of what I call a survey style or a multi-part form, where you're actually asking them a series of questions, and you're moving through multiple pages, and then ultimately you ask them for their contact information. And on that submission, you get a lead, and then hopefully you're delivering something, or at least responding to them in quick order. The reason I like those survey style forms is just simply because, and we've done lots of testing and I have the data to support this, about 80% of the leads that I generate through my agencies are actually filled out. This is even in a B2B context, which always surprises me, is actually filled out on a mobile phone. So what does that mean? On a mobile phone, you've got small screens. It's hard to kind of type into those web forms. I also hate the ask that is a web form that has name and email and this description box. You got to kind of think, what am I going to write in there, or what should I write in there? And instead, the survey just asks them the questions and gives them multiple choice as to what you want to know when you receive that lead, or the information you want to exchange for whatever that value proposition is. And that's kind of a really clean and effective transaction. And again, gives you a lot of information. The other way I explain it is, given the choice between an essay test versus a multiple choice test when you're in school, which did you always prefer, right? The multiple choice, probably. And essentially the web form is the essay. You're asking them to think up what to put in the box. And in my multi-part survey style form, I'm actually asking them the questions and giving them choices, so they don't have to really think about it. They can just pile through that form. Pull-through rate is so much better. Okay, so that's the first thing, a landing page. Now, we're going to build on that. The next thing that we would hopefully build on, but before I guess I get there, it's important to reinforce it. I can start my campaign right there, right? I can create some content on LinkedIn or Twitter or some other platform that already has my ICP in there. And then I could simply push them to that link, landing page, boom, I'm in business. I'm starting to run lead generation campaigns. But let's continue to build out on that. Kind of the next thing you want to do is you want to probably incorporate that landing page or links to that landing page from a website. And so again, building the website doesn't have to be overly complex, doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I suggest starting that build on WordPress for a couple of reasons. One, WordPress is a great platform, fairly simple to use. You could do it yourself. But if you can't, there are literally thousands of people that can help you design and develop an incredible WordPress platform and do it really well. There's a bunch of templates that are built for it. So it's a great place to start, and it will serve you long term as well. So you don't have to blow up that website. You just get somebody to iterate on it. It also has great bones as far as supporting SEO and even PPC. So Google Ads usually likes it when you're driving traffic to it. So I would always suggest WordPress. There's some other things. Webflows is a really popular one, especially in lead generation, because again, it allows you to be pretty efficient getting things up. I'm not sure, although a lot of people would debate me on this, I'm not sure that it will serve you as well in some of the SEO strategies and that sort of things. And even though it's kind of billed as being very simplistic, I personally have found it a little bit complex and has a bit of a learning curve to it. So it's not simply sort of copy and paste. So, but there's a couple different options, but let's not get wrapped around the technology as much as what should be in that website. And again, I'm a big fan of keeping things fairly simple and thinking about where traffic and where visitors are going to interact with that website, and then making sure that each of those most typical intersections or points of interface are fully optimized to capture a lead. So here are the kind of the 4 sort of use cases that you should optimize on your website. The homepage. I'm going to start here, even though personally I don't really think about starting there, but everybody else does. Your homepage actually, especially in the early days, will get little to no use, honestly. Things that you're kind of ranking for, if you're doing content, particularly if you're doing PPC, you're not going to drive traffic to the homepage, right? The homepage is really only going to satisfy those people that are doing a little extra research on you or validating. If you're going through a vendor management process, they'll probably land on the homepage. And then quite honestly, your own internal processes. I find some of the biggest users of the homepage are often the people in the organization trying to find something that they can use in a sales or marketing context or whatever. So I think, again, homepage, you should definitely think through how you lay that out. I still want that lead generation structure that I mentioned to be at the very top of that page, because most of the people that get there, especially if they search for your brand and they've landed there, there's probably about I think there's even some studies that support this, about 70% of those people have already made a decision to interact with you. And so you should put that opportunity to interact and make an inquiry right at the top. So that structure, who you are, what you do, kind of the benefit of interacting with you, asking them to do something, which is to fill out this survey form so that you can set up a discovery session. That's probably what you want right at the top. And then the rest of that page, as you move down that landing page, which a homepage is essentially a landing page, all you're trying to do now is reinforce credibility or build their confidence so that they can actually make the inquiry. So there's a couple things that you can do after that. A lot of times I like to kind of showcase in a little more depth my product. This could be a demo. This could be the process that you're going to go through. If you're providing a service, there can be some examples. As you move down, some trust indicators, maybe there's some logos, maybe some other things in the industries that you serve that kind of reinforce your credibility and expertise. And then another thing which kind of goes sort of hand in hand with that is listing out or creating some sort of grid of the content that's on your website, the blog posts. This will help for SEO, but it'll also give people a little bit of, I'm a big fan and talk about this in a lot of videos, creating rabbit trails and rabbit holes. This will allow them to binge in that. So think about sort of your little Netflix grid so that they can binge on your content and really start to buy into your approach. And as they read through that, it's going to help your sales process, because again, if they've kind of moved through that and then they inquire, they're going to have bought into your approach, your positioning on, again, whatever your product or service is. So that's going to be really effective. And then, of course, footer. In that footer, don't neglect it. There should be some great contact information. I'm a big fan of putting faces on brands, right? So that means we need a good address, we need a good phone number. Ideally, we are linking off to an about page that tells our story. We're linking off to maybe some leadership or some bios and showing that there are faces in that organization. I think sometimes when we think digital, we create these sort of faceless brands, and I think that really erodes trust and credibility and makes it harder for that to convert. But if you show, hey, there's a story, there's a founder, there's some people that work there, they kind of look and act like me, or probably have some affinity, maybe in reading their bios, and that sort of thing will help kind of conversion in there. So that's the home page. Landing pages, not much extra to go over there. Landing pages are kind of constructed in the same way. The only difference for landing pages is I usually have kind of two things in mind with landing pages. Most of these will be used for PPC, but those kind of two categories that I line them up against is one, landing pages for each of the products or services that I sell. So it's very specific. It's important in the digital context to be as narrow and niched as possible, even when we're talking about traffic. So have a specific landing page for every product or service that you deliver. And if you're delivering services, maybe sort of productized version of those services. And then I also like to do landing pages that have more of a scenario context. So if there are certain use cases or scenarios whereby people interact with you, sometimes in the B2B context, maybe we'll slice out and create landing pages by service sectors that I support, or by industries that I support, or different roles or scenarios. So again, some more scenario-based, use-case landing pages I think are really important. And then again, how you structure those are all very much the same, right? Capture at the top, and then reinforce credibility and trust as you move down that landing page. The third category that I want to optimize for is content. So if I'm doing any sort of SEO strategy, which I advocate you doing that as early as you possibly can, even if you're writing the content yourself, start to write content. Hopefully, get an SEO tool, take a look at the different search demand and potentially the difficulty, and work, actually write on topics that people are actually searching for. There is some demand for. Short of that, if you don't have those tools, you probably know what those are. And so to write content that is, again, more sort of problem and solution oriented seems to be the best. The other thing that's a really good category of content is to write comparisons. I've had all kinds of success by comparing myself or the product or service that I'm selling to competitors. And those comparisons often are done in searches, and they indicate them being very low in the funnel. They're getting ready to transition into buying. That's why they're comparing. And a lot of brands are afraid to mention their competitors, but I found it very effective to be honest and transparent in that comparison, and to mention yourself alongside of those competitors. Those tend to rank really well, and that's great content. And then, of course, we're making sure that we have call to actions in there, or little sections or blocks inside of our content that, again, reminds them what we do, how we can help them, and then gets them off to that survey style form so that I can get a lead or a demo scheduled. And then the fourth, and this kind of works together with a lot of these others, is a lot of times people need to actually have material that they want to take away and consult with others, right? Maybe there's a committee that's part of the buying decision. Maybe there's a spouse at home that needs to kind of buy in the B2C context. And so a lot of times people want to take away some content. Lead magnets are great for this, right? It gives you a deep dive and prepare some nice, beautiful, easy to understand content. And then in exchange for that, you can gate it or not gate it. I tend to like to gate it because it gives me sort of a test of, again, can I complete a transaction? So if I'm a startup, lead magnets are a great way to sort of MVP my product and see if I can get an exchange of value going, right? Can I actually get somebody to give me something of value for what I'm doing? And that, again, can kind of test ahead of actual revenue or an actual true product. Can I complete a transaction? Lead magnets are a great test of that. Okay, so now we've got our hub, our foundation, our lead generation platform. Now we got to get some traffic and move towards it. So traffic-wise, there's really kind of three categories, big categories in my mind. SEO and content, which is, again, content you're going to create on your site. Ultimately, Google's going to take a look at that, put it in its index as it sees appropriate, and then hopefully get you some page one rankings so that those people will search for relevant search terms and then come to your site, land on some of those articles. This takes a long time to kind of work, even if you're really good at it. I advocate doing it as soon as you can, but don't expect the lead generation results to happen terribly quickly. Now, this can be totally different if, one, you've got a little bit of SEO chops, or you're working with an agency, or you're kind of in a new and emerging field. It's got a little bit of search demand in that you can have sort of outsized results from this. So regardless, I would recommend and like for you to start this as early as possible, because ultimately it will be your largest driver of lead generation traffic. Next thing, and this is usually the first place that new founders and startups should start, and that is to find a social media or a platform that you're comfortable on. This could be LinkedIn is a big one for B2B, could be Twitter, could be YouTube, I think is a great one that's emerging. There's a variety of others. Find a platform that already has your audience and start producing content for that. And then the nice thing about that is the traffic is already there. You just have to produce the content. And again, think through, use a little bit of strategy, figure out what content works, kind of play to the algorithm, get that content in front of them. And then, of course, your CTA is to drive them back to your website. That's kind of the first place that you can really quickly get some essentially free traffic. Just takes a little bit of sweat and sort of figuring some things out. The last one, and again, depending on what your capital structure is, this could be the first thing you start with, or this could be the last, because it does take some capital. This is the one category that I recommend you getting an expert, because in PPC on these app platforms, you can literally light money on fire. And so if you're not an expert, particularly if you're in a competitive sort of marketplace. So not talking my book here, but regardless, us or someone else, I do really encourage you to reach out to an agency or somebody with some expertise, some proven expertise in the area that you're actually going to run these ads. Because again, there's some complexity in there. There's algorithms now involved. And again, it's going to take an expert. Even I, having been in this business for 20 plus years, would not run personally Google ads or Facebook ads, even with as much knowledge as I have and a pretty good familiarity with the tools themselves. I hire experts, right? Because it's just becoming that complex, and the money is a significant risk, particularly if you're a startup or a founder and you're using your own capital. So get an expert there. Then the last phase, and again, this can kind of start at different tiers, but I usually start this after I've got the other infrastructure, because this category, email marketing, is actually going to have a tendency to give you the opportunity to drive people back to that lead generation platform. So email marketing, I think, is something that's important to start as soon as you're generating leads, because all of those leads should be going into your list. There are some other ways to generate some lists. Lead magnets are a great way to, again, acquire subscribers to that list. That list over time will build and become a nice base of loyal ICPs that are already vetted, because of the variety of ways that they actually come onto the list. And then you can start to segment them. And I always call my email list the cash register, because every time I send out an email, guaranteed to make revenue off of that, again, assuming that I've done some things right. I always advocate starting with a newsletter, something like Substack. Super easy, it's free. Substack has a lot of features in it that will help make that easier, and you can kind of and write that personal newsletter to your ICP. That's kind of the best way to start it. There's all kinds of strategies outside of that, but I think that's a good place to start. The other place that you should be using email is all of those leads should be coming into a CRM. Again, there's a variety of these. Go high level, super popular. I personally use Close in the context of B2B. In the B2C, there's all kinds of different ones. HubSpot is B2B and B2C. Salesforce, pretty popular, although talking about lighting money on fire, they can get really expensive in a surprising sort of way. So beware there. But there's a lot of great CRM systems. What you want to do with email there is you want to have some sequences built in. So as those leads come in and they hit certain statuses, you start some automation that allows you to kind of talk intelligently in what seems like kind of a relevant, natural way to that client and to those leads inside your database, even while you're working on the actual people that are engaged with you, and you can let that database sort of work in an automated fashion. So hopefully that is as step-by-step and concise as I possibly can be on generating leads as a founder or startup or your business. That is really the format that will work and has worked for me over and over again, client after client. And it's pretty easy if you just kind of take it step by step. Even you can do it without too much of external assistance. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you've been here up until this point, like and subscribe, and that way you'll get more of this content, and it'll help the channel, our little tiny channel, grow and be more influential in this lead generation space. So hope to see you on the next one.